Kandana नमो ज्योतिरज्योति उज्ज्वलरुधिकन्दर ज्योतिरज्योति उज्ज्वलरुधिकन्दर तुमितमभञ्जनः प्रभु तुमितमभञ्जनः नमो नमो प्रभु वाक्यमनादित नमो नमो प्रभु वाक्यमनादित मनोवचन काधार प्रभु मनोवचन काधार ज्योतिरज्योति उज्ज्वलरुधिकन्दर ज्योतिरज्योति उज्ज्वलरुधिकन्दर तुमितमभञ्जनः प्रभु तुमितमभञ्जनः धिधिधिरङ्गरङ्गभङ्गवादे रङ्गसङ्गमुदे गाये चै छन्द भगतरिन्द आरती गाये चै छन्द भगतरिन्द आरती जय जय आरती हर हर आरती शिव शिव आरती खंड भव बंधन जग वंदितो जय श्री गुरु महाराज जी की जय। ओम ह्रीं ह्रीतं त्वमचलो गुणजीर्णेढ्या नक्तं दिवं सकरुणं तव पादपद्मं मोहं कषं बहुकृतं न भजे यतोऽहं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो भक्तिर्भगच भजनं भवभेदकारी गच्छन्त्यलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदमे न च भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ति तरसा त्वयि तृप्त तृष्णा रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि राम कृष्णे मत्यामृतं तव पदं मरणोमि नाशं तस्मात् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीन बन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारी स्नान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरणो जगदेक गम्य तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीन बन्धो ॐ स्थापक धर्मस्य सर्वधर्म स्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। सर्वमंगल मांगल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। सृष्टि स्थिति विनाशानां शक्ति भूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमय नारायणी नमोस्तुते। शरणागत दीनार्त परित्राण परायणे सर्वस्यार्थे हरे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। जय नारायणी नमोस्तुते। जय नारायणी जय नारायणी नमोस्तुते जय नारायणी नमोस्तुते। जय महामाई की जय। जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय। जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय। प्रकृतिं परमामभयां वरदां नररूपधरा न तापहरा शरणागतसेवकतोषकरी प्रणमामि परा जननीं जगता गुणहीन सुतान पराधयुता कृपयाद्य समुत्तर मोहगता करणी भवसागर पार करी प्रणमामि परा जननी जगता विषयं कुसुमं परिहृत्य सदा चरणाम्बुरुहामृतान्ते सुधा पिबवृङ्गमनो भवरोगहरा प्रणमामि परा जननीं जगता कृपां कुरु महादेवी सुतेषु प्रणतेषु च चरणाश्रयदानेन कृपामयि नमोस्तुते। लज्जापटावृते नित्यं शारदे ज्ञानदायिके पापेभ्यो न सदा रक्ष कृपामयि नमोस्तुते। रामकृष्णगतप्राणां तन्नाम श्रवणप्रियां तद्भावरञ्जिताकारा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः। पवित्रं चरितं यस्य पवित्रं जीवनं तथा पवित्रता स्वरूपिणे तस्यै कुर्मो नमो नमः। देवीं प्रसन्नां प्रणतात्रिहन्त्री योगीन्द्रपूजा युगधर्मपात्रे तां शारदां भक्तिविज्ञानदात्री दयास्वरूपा प्रणमामि नित्यं स्नेहेन बध्नासि मनोस्मदीयं दोषान् शेषान् सगुणीकरोषि अहेतुना नो दयसे यदिदं विचित्रं प्रसीद मातः विनयेन याचे नित्यं भवस्नेहवतेषु तेषु प्रेमैकबिन्दु चिरदत्तचित्ते विषिञ्चचित्तं कुरु न सुशान्तं जननीं शारदां देवी रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः।
राजीव नहीं है यार? अच्छा ठीक। नमः श्री यतिराजाय विवेकानंद सूरय सच्चित् सुख स्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. So last time we had been discussing this particular mantra from the Kathopanishad. Na esha tarkena mati apaneya proktani proktanyenaiva Proktani anenaiva sugnaya preshtha yang tvam apa satya dhritir batasi twadring no bhuyat nachiketa prashna. थोड़ा सा एको आ रहा है, bass थोड़ा कम कर. Hello, yeah. So we had been discussing this particular mantra, and I think we had discussed at a certain measure of length what is the difference between what is called Tarka and Vichara. And see, the thing is, the connotation that is given here, and this is what we will be expanding on in the next two paragraphs of Vivekananda's lecture, is basically there is a more superficial aspect from it, which of this whole exercise, which consists of intellectual gymnastics, and it's essentially something that lacks depth. What does that mean? It means that it is an exercise in argumentation without trying to get at the heart of the issue, without trying to probe deeper till one reaches truth. Yeah, so there are these three words, and it's, I think, important to bear in mind the difference in connotation between them. The one, Tarka; second, Vichara; and third, Jigyasa. Of these, I mean, it's a progressive increase in depth. From the outside, which means basically on the surface, the three things might look very similar. Why? Because basically all these things are at the basis of it a certain exercise of the analytical intellect. But the first, it's basically, the Tarka is just based on argumentation aimed at either winning arguments or defeating one's opponent, no more. Which means the importance of truth, the value of truth in such an exercise is minimal in Tarka. When we come to Vichara, which has a deeper connotation, which means basically, I think, the same faculty of analysis, but directed towards inner structures, which means one is asking oneself at this stage, what do I really mean when I say such a thing? Meaning, essentially, the words have started having less of a significance, and the content of those words becomes more important. And finally, the word Jigyasa, where the external exercise of Vichara or analysis becomes completely secondary. See, the thing is, the word itself does not have any have any content which contains this external argumentation in it. Literally, as we've said before, it's the desire to know. That's what Jigyasa literally means. So whether this desire to know is accompanied by argumentation or not is irrelevant. So the core driving principle of this desire for truth is what is crystallized in this word Jigyasa. Yeah? And then when you couple it with the exercise of Vichara, then it becomes a practice. And that practice necessarily presupposes that the person practicing this Vichara is driven by a desire for truth above everything else. So much so that the not knowing, the absence of being able to know something, causes discomfort, dissatisfaction. And this dissatisfaction is painful, And that pain needs to be alleviated by getting at the truth. The external act of vichara, or the mental exercise, more precisely, of vichara, of analysis, is driven by this desire. Yeah, so let's sort that out. At the core, there is this desire for truth called Jigyasa. Completely externally, there is argumentation or Tarka. And when the two are linked together, that is this mental exercise called Vichara. So, Vichara starts with assuming mental objects and trying to get at the bottom of these things, driven by a desire for truth. Yeah? And so when this particular mantra is quoted, na esha tarkena mati apaneya, what one really means is just if you exclude the first, if you exclude Jigyasa from this exercise and reduce everything only to this external exercise of Tarka, then one has missed the point altogether. And such an exercise can only lead one astray. So, it's the same thing in the, even in the devotional exercises. Yeah? So, there is these worship, there is an external act of worship. Now, suppose that external act of worship is being performed with great diligence by obeying every strict injunction, but minus, so just that act in itself does not yield much. What does is if that particular act supports a core sense of devotion. Yeah? This is what the Bhakti Marg is about. This core feeling of devotion, which means a longing for a deeper truth, a deeper reality. Once that fuels this external act, then the two get conjoined and it becomes something effective. In the absence of this internal factor, the subjective factor, the mere external act is just a dry ritual of no value at all. The same thing happens in this path of jnana also. The external ritual, which is the physical thing in acts of worship, is replaced by the intellectual ritual, so to speak. And the intellectual ritual is exactly this tarka, or arguing, or weighing pros and cons, and logical manipulations. It's only when that gets coupled. So in the devotional thing, it is the sense of devotion. Here, it is devotion to an impersonal thing, namely the love of truth. Yeah? So this love of truth above everything else, once it fuels this external exercise, that makes the act of vichara powerful. So this is the point of this mantra, Nayesha Tarkena Matirapanaya. So let's go on. And here is where Vivekananda expands on this. He says, this is one great idea to learn and to hold on, to, this idea of realization. That's the name of this whole lecture, realization. Yeah? And very often, we have all kinds of bizarre interpretations of this word. Sometimes it is interpreted as having some kind of mystical vision. Sometimes it is interpreted as something supernatural, and so on. Sometimes people start believing in all kinds of completely crazy and irrelevant things, and then try to pass that off as something religious. We'll come back to this because the word really is exactly, I mean, so if you look at the word realize, it's, see, when you have, say, something like this word eyes is to make, right? The suffix eyes, I-Z-E or I-S-E, is to make. So realize is to make real. Yeah? And so what is it that we are supposed to be making real? And here is the first question that we should be asking ourselves. When we look at the external world, without any argumentation, without any mental intervention, there is this instinctive reaction of the mind which says that what we are looking at is real, is true. This is an instinctive reaction to the external world. So we don't have to realize the world. It is something that appears to us as real. But when we come to these deeper aspects of our psyche, then very often they are mere abstract entities to us. We use these words, consciousness, Atman, Brahman, Shunya, God, etc., etc. But these are just words very often, and the directly perceived content that these words point to is missing. So that means what is missing is this perception that these words are not just words, but they point to something very real that can be experienced immediately, as real as the world is to us today. It is this change of point of view which takes the internal point of what we call conscious principle, projecting to the world, and make that real, more real than the object which shines by its benefit. This is what this word is supposed to mean, which means this universal principle of consciousness through which we hear, see, think, feel, etc., all our mental as well as sensory activities, the principle that grants reality to these activities. Once that becomes real to us, at least as real as the world, then we understand the meaning of this word, realize. Yeah? We very often use this word in a colloquial connotation. Oh, I hadn't realized that so and so was the meaning of this. What does that mean? It means that we had heard the words, we had heard the expressions, but it did not have this deeper significance that it affects us in a very concrete way. Once it affects our day-to-day actions, our day-to-day thinking, our day-to-day feeling, without even having to think about it, that is exactly what making such and such a thing real or realize means. In the absence of our sense of reality granting primacy to this non-material principle of consciousness, everything is mere discussion, and is of much less value. So, therefore, he makes this one categorical statement. This is one great idea to learn and to hold on to, this idea of realization. First, learn, which means getting this sense that there is something worth investigating, worth looking into. This is learning, and holding on to it, which means the mind starts focusing on this particular issue more and more. What is the consequence of such a thing? It is essentially getting at the essentials and getting rid of the inessentials. This turmoil and fight and difference in religions will cease only when we understand that religion is not in books and temples, it is an actual perception. Only the man who has actually perceived God and soul has religion. There is no real difference between the highest ecclesiastical giant who can talk by the volume and the lowest, most ignorant materialist. We are all atheists. Let us confess it. Mere intellectual assent does not make us religious. Take a Christian or a Mohammedan or a follower of any other religion in the world. Any man who truly realized the truth of the Sermon on the Mount would be perfect and become a god immediately. Yet it is said that there are many millions of Christians in the world. What is meant is that mankind may at some time try to realize that sermon. Not 1 in 20 million is a real Christian. Again, this word, what is meant by all these books and devices that help us, what it means is that mankind may at some time try to realize that sermon. Yeah? Which means so the Sermon on the Mount is a famous thing from Matthew in the Bible. I think it's chapter 5. And it gives various injunctions, but they are very often heard as words, as injunctions, and the reality content of these things, of such a thing, is missing. If one makes it real in one's life, this is again, making it real is what realization is about, then one has perfected it. And so the fights between religions, and I would go so far as to the fight between people who claim to believe in a God and who claim to disbelieve, all these fights and all the shallow argumentation would cease provided the sense of reality that we use to direct our attention outwards is directed within, and the meaning of the word reality is grasped without these trappings. And he goes on, this is not specific to any particular organized religion. So in India, there are said to be 300 millions of Vedantins. But if there were 1 in 1,000 who had actually realized religion, this world would soon be greatly changed. We are all atheists, and yet we try to fight the man who admits it. We are all in the dark. Religion is to us a mere intellectual assent, a mere talk, a mere nothing. We often consider a man religious who can talk well. But this is not religion. Wonderful methods of joining words, rhetorical powers, and explaining texts of the books in various ways These are only for the enjoyment of the learned and not religion. Yeah? So this is a free translation of a shloka from the Vivekchudamani, which says, Vag Vaikhari Shabdajhari Shastra Vyakhyana Kaushalam Vaidushyam Vidusham Tadvat Bhuktaye Natu Muktaye. Vak Vaikhari, loud speech. Shabdajhari, shower of words. Shastra Vyakhyana. Shastra is scriptures. Vyakhya is exposition or expounding. Kaushalam is skill. So, pouring out words and loudly, and skill in enunciating or giving an exposition of these scriptures. Vaidushyam Vidusham Tadvat Bhuktaye Natu Muktaye is for the enjoyment of the learned, but it does not lead to the understanding, to the grasping of truth. Muktaye. Which means this dissatisfaction that is there which is what we want to get rid of, because we have not grasped the truth with our whole being. That dissatisfaction, same thing that joys are transient and they go away. This clarity, this understanding and the resulting dissatisfaction, that does not go away with this more superficial aspect of giving expositions or discussing scriptural knowledge. So it's basically just the purely intellectual aspect of the ritual. Unless it is connected intimately, deeply, to this subjective quest for truth. In other words, unless it is connected intrinsically to a primal drive for subjective clarity, truth, reality, whatever you want to call it, in the absence of that, it is of no value. That is what is being said here. Religion comes when that actual realization in our own souls begins. That will be the dawn of religion, and then alone we shall be moral. Now we are not much more moral than the animals. We are only held down by the whips of society. If society said today, I will not punish you if you steal, we should just make a rush for each other's property. It is the policeman that makes us moral. It is social opinion that makes us moral. And really, we are little better than animals. We understand how much this is so in the secret of our own hearts. So let us not be hypocrites. Let us confess that we are not religious and have no right to look down on others. We are all brothers, and we shall be truly moral when we have realized religion. So here, Vivekananda, when he uses this word religion, he is clearly not referring to this contraption that we call organized religion. He has removed the social structure from it altogether and is focusing purely on this core universal human experiencer, universal in all human beings. If that is that principle which seeks truth, which seeks higher value, which seeks bliss, is identified, then one asks this question, is this principle in any way different in me from you? This principle that inside one's psyche, which grants a reality to the world around us, that grants reality to ideas, that grants reality to feelings, is that something that is conditioned by the specifics of the person? Or is it something that one can treat as universal in all subjective experience? And if it is universal, then by definition, it is not caught within the specific meshes of an individual body and mind. This kind of thinking, this kind of analysis, and the output it leads to, in terms of a lived life, a real lived life, not intellectual cogitation and ratiocination, but something that is translated into the way one views the world without even intellectual intervention. That instinctive reaction, or that instinctive way of conducting oneself, with this perception that the principle, this conscious principle, is what is fundamental and everything else is secondary, this clarity, the greater it is, the more truly religious one is. And it's completely irrelevant. What is completely irrelevant is whether one calls oneself a Vedantin or a Vaidika or a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist. And the entire business of organized religion gets treated as something that is secondary, something that is completely irrelevant. Usually the kind of arguments that are offered is, well, if one believed in this truly, then what would happen is that somebody else who subscribes to another thing would come and kill you off or beat you up. I think such people who put forward such arguments miss the basic point. They are really arguing about something very material. I belong to this tribe, you give it one name. Call it Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim, whatever. And the other person belongs to another tribe, also called Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist, whatever. And then if the label differs, then one group of people decide to go and hunt down or beat up or exercise violence against the other. What is one talking about there? Does it have anything to do with religion? No. So it's here that this sharp differentiation needs to be made by this external social structure, which leads to differentiation between one group of people and another, which has nothing to do with the core intent of religion per se, and the other is what is essential. And the entire fight is what Vivekananda is pointing out here. The entire fight is about the crumbs, about the inessentials, about the irrelevant stuff. Why? Because of the fact that we are right now at this moment confused between the conscious principle and the unconscious principle. This confusion in Vedanta is called Adhyasa. So our lives, or Maya, as we've talked about before, the act is called, the specific act, Shankara calls Adhyasa. So imposing the ideas of the conscious principle on the unconscious and vice versa. So this confusion is the way we live. And when we start arguing in this erroneous way, what we are really doing is we are emphasizing the unconscious principle, which has absolutely nothing to do with the core spirit of religion. And as Vivekananda has pointed out here, it has more to do with our animal being. I think we have said this here before. There's this there's this wildlife documentary by David Attenborough, which showed a certain tribe of chimpanzees in Africa. And they photographed, or they shot this whole sequence where one particular tribe of chimpanzees, from the morning, there is a certain measure of unrest and vehemence in their behavior. Then around mid-morning, all the able male chimpanzees in that tribe, they head off together to catch hold and slaughter members of another tribe, eat up their babies, and then come back. What's happening here is essentially that there are these two tribes, and it doesn't matter what label you give them. What one is doing is basically there is this fight for physical survival, and in order to, and so there is a limitation of resources, and in order to make sure that those resources don't go to the other tribe, one tribe goes and destroys the other. All this fight between organized religions is just this animal behavior with a plastering, with a coating on top, which, at least this animal behavior is an honest behavior. These chimpanzees are not trying to pretend to the rest of the world that they are doing this for the sake of some higher, nobler thing. They are doing it for survival, and that's it. On the other hand, when you try to justify violence towards another group of people under the garb of some kind of organized religion, what one is doing is firstly, it's an act of animal malice, nothing more, nothing less. And then it is being plastered by words which pretends that this is for some higher purpose. And so, it is both animal behavior plus this act which human beings alone are capable of, an act of gross dishonesty. Why? Because it does not come with an honest introspection which actually outlines that the real motive is basically this. It's exactly what our human ancestors did when one tribe fought another tribe for resources. And it's the same thing that is done by their ancestors, which are these humanoids, or things which have evolved off the evolutionary tree, like chimpanzees. And so, this is why he makes this categorical statement: now we are not much more moral than animals. So what is it that keeps us moral? It's basically we have put structures in place in society, and it's this fear of the police or fear of social opinion being the predominant one, which basically keeps us in our place. Which means that our so-called moral behavior is not fueled by a desire for truth, by a desire for something higher, but rather a fear of retribution. Which is why the primitive religions would talk about all these things like sin and papa and punya and all that contraption. Why? Because their intent was not just to make sure that people get at this core truth, in all its pristine purity, but also have a cogent society that allows for this enquiry. Now I think we have come to a stage in human evolution, societal evolution, not biological, societal evolution, where at least a definite section of society understands that these social structures are there to suggest some principle which is higher, namely the unity of existence. If I robbed another person, my own possessions would be under threat. Therefore, there's this pragmatic reason not to steal. A more fundamental reason is basically saying that the senses that I have and the senses that another has, at the foundation they are the same. This deeper understanding and clarity, which basically allows every individual the freedom to live according to his or her lights without harming others. This clear understanding of this principle is really at the foundation of what we call morality, which means it needs to be backed by this knowledge. And this knowledge is really at the foundation, this understanding that this principle of consciousness, in and through which I think, feel, see, etc., is something that is common to all. And if I identify myself with this fundamental faculty, then we achieve a certain oneness of existence. We no longer see another as fundamentally different from oneself. Yeah? And so, first, this understanding or that what is it that we are seeking in and through all that we seek, whether it be truth, whether it be joy, whether it be existence, freedom to exist. What is it that we are really seeking? This is the mind turned inwards and questioning itself. Nothing needs to be said. You don't need to assign labels. It's this process of inquiry applied to oneself. One. Second, understanding that that which I seek is fundamentally not different from that whom we conveniently call another seeks. So the first, understanding this principle of consciousness, which is the same as the principle of truth, the principle of satisfaction, the principle of joy, bliss, whatever you want to call it. One. Second, understanding that this principle is universal. It is not limited to me. It is the same in everybody. This is really the scientific study of the deepest aspects of our psyche. It is because we take this as universal that structures are put in place in society, which is why we have liberal democracies as systems of government. It is exactly this principle which allows a doctor to treat different patients, because such a doctor grasps the universal principle guiding our physical bodies. A psychiatrist manages to identify at least some aspects of the mental, so at least the problems that afflict an unhealthy mind are somehow universally understood. And then when we start probing deeper, then we see that the universal principles guiding any healthy mind are also basically the same. And probing deeper, we see that all these mental faculties, thinking, feeling, willing, are unified around this subjective sense of reality, which is what we call consciousness, which is what we call joy. So when we say this is real, what Vedanta now says is that when we say that this is real and this is this aspect of my being meaning your being, anybody's being, which grants reality, that aspect which is being emphasized is called in Vedanta Sat. Sat comes from this word true, asti, isness. And then when we use the word consciousness, we are referring to that same reality, but from the lens of what is called chit, or knowledge. And when we are looking at the same thing from the point of view of satisfaction or subjective joy, we call it ananda. So it is this universal principle which in the context of Vedanta is called Sat Chit Ananda. It's not something esoteric, not something mystical. It is a result of investigation of one's own psyche in the most fundamental way possible. And this is what gives rise to the real spirit of religion. There is this book called Man's Quest or Man's Search for Meaning. So when we say basically what happens when people feel depressed or even take their own lives, what happens is basically this, that they have lost touch with things that they would find meaningful. And their own lives become meaningless to them, which means this inner faculty which grants reality to everything has become something which is merely abstract and one is alienated from it. It's an act, I think one of our respected senior monks call this is basically the phenomenon of self-alienation, which means I go on existing in this body and mind, but somehow have lost touch with the core of my own being. Who from outside is going to be of any help? It's essentially required at such a stage to introspect and ask oneself, what is it in me that grants me satisfaction? What is it in me that grants truth to my existence? What is it in me that I say is real? And then proceed again towards it. Proceed does not mean moving physically. It means this inner movement of the psyche through whatever means possible. We'll return to this next week. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.